Ethan Cole stood on the edge of the alien marketplace, his eyes wandering over the chaos of colors, lights, and sounds. The trade hub orbited a dim red dwarf star, and though the sun itself was small and weak, the station blazed with activity. Merchants of 100 species shouted in strange voices, their stalls overflowing with technology, weapons, exotic food, and creatures from worlds Ethan had never even heard of. It was noisy, strange, and overwhelming, but Ethan was used to that. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. They were the new ones, still learning, still underestimated. Most aliens saw humans as fragile, clumsy, and short-lived. Ethan had spent years wandering the frontier, trying to prove otherwise, but even now, he felt the weight of being the outsider. His ship needed a new companion. Not for company, at least that's what he told himself, but for survival. Traveling alone in unknown sectors was dangerous. A companion could translate alien languages, monitor systems while he slept, and even help negotiate deals. Ethan had lost his last partner, a robotic unit, to a plasma storm. Now he needed someone, or something, new. He found himself at a stall run by a tall insectoid merchant, its eyes like shards of glass, its mandibles clicking as it gestured toward cages and stasis pods. Inside were beings advertised as companions. Some were bioengineered pets. Others were artificially grown assistants. A few were from alien species that had agreed, out of desperation or trade, to sell members of their kind into contracts as companions. Ethan wasn't proud of it. The whole system felt wrong, but out here, practicality outweighed ideals. He scanned the selection, trying not to look too uncomfortable. The merchant leaned close, its voice a low vibration. Human, you want strong? Obedient, quiet. Yes. I have many, Ethan frowned. I need someone smart. Someone who can handle systems. Maybe even think for themselves a little. The insectoid's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Thinking is dangerous. Better you take one that follows, easy, safe. But Ethan's eyes had already stopped on one of the stasis pods. Inside sat a female alien with shimmering pale skin that seemed to shift colors under the lights. Her hair floated like silver threads, and her eyes, bright, almost glowing, were fixed not on him but on the little insect drone crawling across the pod glass. She was smiling, a real smile. Ethan blinked. He had seen companions before. They usually looked blank, empty, resigned. But this one, she seemed alive, joyful. The merchant followed his gaze and hissed. That one is defective. Laughs too much. Talks too much. No one wants annoying. Ethan tilted his head. What's her species? Solari, the merchant said with a dismissive wave. They are rare. Beautiful, yes, but meant to serve quietly. This one, broken. Too joyful. She makes customers uncomfortable. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. The idea that joy was a defect said everything about how most aliens saw companions. Still, he was curious. What's her name? The merchant clacked its mandibles. No name. You give her name if you buy. But I give discount. Very cheap. Just take her away. Ethan studied the pod again. The Solari girl had noticed him now. Instead of lowering her gaze like most companions, she tilted her head, eyes bright, and waved at him. Actually waved, something stirred in him. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe he just couldn't stand the thought of her ending up with someone who saw her as a nuisance. I'll take her, Ethan said. The merchant froze. You serious? Human, she will tire you with her endless joy. She will talk, and Ethan cut him off. How much? A few credits later, the contract was signed. The pod hissed open, and the Solari stepped out gracefully, her skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She was smaller than Ethan expected, but her presence seemed to fill the space. She looked at him with those radiant eyes and smiled wide. Hello, she said, her voice musical, almost like a song. You're human, right? I've never seen one so close before. You're taller than I thought. And your hair, oh, it looks like starlight. Ethan blinked. Thanks. She laughed, and the sound was so pure and genuine that nearby merchants turned to stare. No companion was supposed to laugh like that. Ethan felt embarrassed, but also oddly warmed. The merchant shoved the contract chip into Ethan's hand. She is yours. No returns. The Solari twirled once, taking in the chaos of the market with wide-eyed wonder. Oh, this is wonderful. So many smells, so many colors. Oh, is that fruit? And look, are those living lights? She pointed excitedly at a stall selling glowing creatures in jars. Ethan sighed. Come on. Let's get to the ship. But she grabbed his hand as if they had been friends forever, her smile never fading. Yes, let's. What's your name? Ethan. She grinned even wider. Ethan, that's strong. I like it. Well, I don't have a name. Will you give me one? He hesitated. Naming her felt too personal, too sudden, but her eyes were so hopeful that he couldn't bring himself to refuse. How about Leora? It means light in one of Earth's old languages. Her face lit up as if he had given her the greatest gift in the universe. Leora, she repeated softly as if tasting the sound. Yes, that's me. Thank you, Ethan. They made their way back through the busy market, Ethan trying to move quickly while Leora stopped every few seconds to marvel at something new. She pointed at starship engines, alien foods, strange sculptures, and even the smallest insects scurrying across the floor. Everything amazed her. By the time they reached his ship, Ethan was exhausted. He lowered the ramp and motioned her inside. She ran ahead eagerly, her silver hair catching the light. This is yours? She asked, eyes wide. It's wonderful. Look at all these buttons. And that chair so tall. Can I sit in it? Ethan rubbed his forehead. It's the pilot's seat. She plopped into it anyway, giggling as she pretended to steer. I'll be the best co-pilot ever, you'll see. We'll fly to the stars, Ethan, isn't that exciting? He wanted to tell her that excitement wasn't the point, that survival mattered more, but something stopped him. Her joy was infectious. He found himself smiling despite himself. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't bought a tool. Maybe he had found something else, someone else. The ship hummed softly as it cut through the dark vacuum of space. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, glancing at the blinking consoles and the distant stars that seemed to stretch forever. Next to him, Leora was perched on the edge of the observation deck, her silver hair floating slightly in the ship's low gravity. She was still marveling at everything, the way the stars shifted past the viewport, the tiny hum of the ship's engines, and even the way the lights on the control panels blinked rhythmically. You see that? Leora asked, pointing at a distant nebula. Its swirling colors were muted from this distance, but she leaned closer, her eyes wide. It's like someone painted the sky with magic. Ethan chuckled softly. It's just gas and light, Leora. But it's beautiful, she insisted. Even gas can be beautiful. He shook his head, amused. He had traveled alone for years, relying on machines and protocols, never expecting that an alien companion could make him laugh so freely. Leora was not just curious, she was joyful in a way that was completely natural. She didn't just notice the universe, she celebrated it. The first few days aboard the ship were chaotic. Leora had a habit of touching every button, exploring every compartment and asking questions about everything Ethan did. At first, he had to correct her constantly. No, don't touch the navigation console like that. But why? She asked, pouting slightly. What if I can help? Ethan had sighed more in 3 days than he had in the last 3 months alone. Yet even in her mischief there was intelligence. She quickly learned to read the basic flight displays, and her questions were sharp, not random. She didn't just touch things. She wanted to understand them. One afternoon, while Ethan was calibrating the ship's sensors, Leora peeked over his shoulder. Why do you press these buttons like this? She asked. They control the sensors, he explained, so I know what's nearby. It's important to avoid dangers, asteroids, rogue satellites, pirates. Pirates? She said, her voice a mix of curiosity and excitement. Ooh, like in the old stories humans tell each other? Ethan raised an eyebrow. You mean stories about brave humans fighting in space? That's not exactly the same. But you're a human. Maybe you are brave. Leora grinned. Her enthusiasm was almost contagious, and Ethan felt a small spark of pride. Brave. Maybe he had forgotten what that felt like. As they traveled deeper into uncharted regions, Ethan noticed something remarkable. Leora wasn't just joyful, she was adaptive. When the ship encountered a strange gravitational anomaly, Ethan had been ready to panic. The readings were off, the instruments confused, and the ship shook. Ethan, the star patterns are shifting differently, Leora exclaimed, leaning over the console. Maybe we can adjust the thrusters to compensate. He hesitated. It's risky. We don't fully understand this phenomenon yet. But if we don't try, we'll get trapped, she countered, eyes shining with determination. Ethan bit his lip and followed her suggestion, carefully adjusting the controls as she guided him. The ship wobbled, groaned, and then stabilized. He exhaled, relief washing over him. You saved us, he said softly. Leora shrugged, smiling. We saved each other, I think. Isn't that better? It struck Ethan. She had no fear of failure, not because she was reckless, but because she trusted herself and trusted him. This was something he had rarely seen, even in humans. Many feared loss, feared pain, feared mistakes. Leora approached everything with curiosity and courage, and her joy seemed to strengthen her. Days passed, and their partnership grew. Leora learned to manage life support systems, monitor communications, and even perform basic repairs. But she never lost her exuberance. She laughed when the ship bounced in microgravity, sang softly while cleaning, and asked endless questions about Earth. "Do humans always explore?" she asked one evening, staring at the stars. "Do you always leave your home and travel far into the unknown?" Ethan shrugged. "Some do. Some stay behind. Exploration. It's part of being human, I guess. We want to see, to understand, to survive. And sometimes, to leave a mark." Her eyes sparkled. "You're leaving a mark already. I can see it. You made me free to laugh, free to explore, free to exist. Isn't that a mark too?" He laughed despite himself. She had a way of turning even his most practical thoughts upside down. Their next stop was a small trading station orbiting a gas giant. Ethan needed supplies, and Leora insisted on coming along. Other aliens stared at them, especially at Leora. Most Solari companions were obedient, emotionless. Yet here was one laughing, moving, and talking like she owned the room. A group of traders snickered as Ethan approached the docking port. "That human bought a defective Solari," one of them whispered. "Look at her. She's happy. Too happy." Ethan ignored them, but Leora noticed. "Did they say something?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nothing important." She tilted her head. "It's strange. Why would anyone think joy is a defect?" Ethan sighed. "Most aliens think companions should just follow orders, not think or feel. Too much personality is inconvenient for them." "Well," she said with a mischievous grin, "inconvenient is my specialty." The merchant's laughter faded when Leora started asking questions. Real questions about trade routes, supply logistics, and even the engineering of the station's docking clamps. She wasn't just charming. She was smart. Her enthusiasm made others listen, often revealing opportunities or problems they hadn't considered. Later, as they unloaded cargo and repaired minor systems, a comm alert buzzed. A small patrol ship was hailing them, its message urgent. Ethan answered, expecting routine inspection. "Human vessel," the voice crackled. "You are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately." Ethan frowned. "We're just a trader and companion. Passing through. No cargo of interest to you. Turn back immediately," the voice insisted, tone sharp. Leora leaned over the console, eyes sharp and focused. "Ethan, I think they want to intimidate us. Maybe we can reason with them differently." "Like what?" he asked skeptically. "Watch this." She activated the external lights, and the ship's communicator broadcast her voice, not the standard monotone, but her natural, melodic tone filled with laughter and warmth. "Hello?" she said brightly. "We're explorers just passing by. Aren't the stars beautiful today? I hope your day is as wonderful as ours." There was silence on the other side. Then slowly the comm crackled. What is this? This is not a normal communication." "Normal is boring," Leora replied cheerfully. "We just want to enjoy the stars and maybe make friends." The patrol ship hesitated, then altered course without confrontation. Ethan stared at Leora, incredulous. "You scared them off." "With joy." "Not scared them off," she said, shrugging with a grin. "Made them hesitate. It's different, isn't it? A human might have tried force. I just smiled." He laughed, shaking his head. Humans had many tools, guns, ships, weapons. But Leora reminded him that sometimes intelligence and spirit were far stronger. That night, as the ship drifted near a quiet asteroid belt, Ethan sat in the cockpit staring at the stars. Leora floated nearby, cleaning some instruments but humming softly. "You know," Ethan said finally, "you're different from any companion I've ever had. You don't just follow orders. You think, you feel, you make this ship feel alive." Leora floated closer and smiled. "Because life is meant to be joyful, Ethan. Even in the dark, even in the empty reaches of space. Humans, your kind, have this spark. I see it in you, and it makes me want to laugh, to explore, to celebrate." He realized she was right. Humans were fragile compared to ancient alien empires. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their lifespans shorter. Yet in moments like this, facing the void, making choices, refusing to be afraid, they shone in ways no machine or alien culture could. For the first time, Ethan understood something fundamental. Leora wasn't just a companion. She was a reminder. A mirror reflecting what humanity could be. Resilient, clever, and joyfully alive, and in that reflection, he saw the possibility of more adventure, more challenges, more ways to leave a mark on the galaxy. Leora laughed softly, her voice drifting across the cabin. Tomorrow, she said, we'll explore that nebula properly. I want to see every color, every spark, every hidden star. Ethan smiled, a real smile, unguarded and warm. Tomorrow, he said, we explore the stars together. The stars stretched endlessly before Ethan's ship as it glided past asteroid fields and swirling gas clouds. Yet despite the beauty outside, tension had begun to creep into the cabin. Leora sat at the observation deck, flipping through a star chart she had borrowed from the ship's library. But her joy was tinged with curiosity and concern. Ethan frowned at the sensors. There's a fleet ahead. I don't recognize them. Leora peered at the displays. They don't match any trade or patrol ships we've seen. Are they hostile? Possibly, Ethan admitted. We're in uncharted space. Anything could be waiting for us. For a moment, the two companions fell silent. Ethan's mind raced with tactical options. Hide in asteroid belts? Try to negotiate? Retreat? Each choice carried risk. Then Leora spoke, her voice steady but eager. Why not try talking first? Ethan stared at her. Talking won't always work. Some people or aliens don't want to talk. But some do, Leora said softly. And maybe they won't expect us, he sighed. She had a point, of course. Humans had always thrived in situations where logic alone failed. Intuition, creativity, and sometimes sheer stubbornness had allowed them to survive against overwhelming odds. Maybe her approach was exactly what they needed. As the fleet drew closer, Ethan activated the comm. The lead ship, a sleek gray vessel bristling with weapons, responded immediately. Human vessel, a harsh, metallic voice boomed. You are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourselves or be destroyed. Ethan swallowed. He opened his mouth to respond, but Leora beat him to it. Hello, she said brightly. We're explorers, not fighters. Look at all the stars around us. Isn't it amazing? Please don't hurt us. We just want to learn and see, Ethan blinked. Her voice was melodic, almost singing through the comm, filled with excitement and warmth. The lead ship hesitated. There was a pause long enough for Ethan to feel the tension in his chest. Finally, the voice returned, strained and uncertain. This is unusual. Why are you speaking like that? This is not standard protocol. We like to celebrate the universe, Leora continued cheerfully. Even dangerous situations can have beauty, don't you think? There was silence again. Ethan watched the view screen nervously, expecting a barrage of energy bolts to appear at any moment. But instead, the fleet slowly veered aside, allowing their ship safe passage. Ethan muttered under his breath. You did it again, didn't you? Did what? Leora asked innocently. I just smiled. I guess it works better than shouting threats. He shook his head, smiling despite the adrenaline. This small, joyful alien was proving something fundamental. Courage wasn't just about firepower or strategy. It could also be about spirit, wit, and unshakable optimism. Later that day, the two explored a nearby derelict station rumored to hold abandoned technology. As they floated through the halls, Leora's eyes were wide and her laughter echoed softly. This place is incredible. Look at these old screens, Ethan. And the walls, they tell stories. Ethan followed her cautiously, checking for security systems or structural damage. Remember, not everything left behind is safe. Some of it might be booby-trapped or unstable. Oh, I love that kind of danger, Leora said, twirling through the air. It makes the adventure feel real. She approached a console covered in dust and grime. Without hesitation, she began analyzing it, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. Ethan watched, impressed. Leora's curiosity was boundless, but so was her intelligence. Within minutes, she had bypassed the station's basic security and activated power to several systems. Look at this, she exclaimed. We can see the entire station layout. There might even be stored supplies or tech we can salvage. Ethan couldn't help but smile. In her own joyful way, Leora was uncovering things no standard companion, or even most humans, would have noticed. But their exploration didn't go unnoticed. A small patrol of alien scavengers appeared from the shadows, weapons raised. Ethan instinctively reached for his blaster, but Leora stepped forward. "Wait!" she called. Her voice rang with confidence and cheer, not fear. "We're just explorers. We mean no harm. Isn't it more fun to share this place than to fight over it?" The scavengers hesitated. Their species, known for aggression and suspicion, were confused by her tone. They weren't used to companions acting like this, bright, cheerful, and assertive. Their leader barked orders, but even he hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Leave or fight," Ethan whispered. "Leave," Leora said brightly. "But let's make a deal instead. We can take what we need without destroying your station. And we'll leave some for you." The leader of the scavengers growled, clearly unaccustomed to negotiation framed in joy and generosity. After a tense moment, he signaled his crew to stand down. They backed away, and Ethan realized what had just happened. Leora had disarmed them with laughter, kindness, and confidence, without firing a single shot. That was incredible," Ethan murmured. "I told you," Leora said, brushing her hair from her face. "Sometimes being clever and cheerful works better than being angry." As they continued through the station, they uncovered ancient star charts and data logs detailing past expeditions. Some were human, some alien, but all showed the galaxy's vast network of civilizations and conflicts. Leora studied the logs eagerly, piecing together information about trade routes, lost colonies, and dangerous territories. "You see, Ethan," she said, pointing at a map of interconnected star systems, "humans aren't just explorers. You're connectors. You bring knowledge, ideas, and sometimes joy to places that have forgotten it. That's your real power." Ethan felt a chill. She was right. Humans had always been underestimated. Yet time and again they had survived by thinking creatively, taking risks, and refusing to give in to despair. Leora had reminded him of something he had long forgotten. Humanity's true strength wasn't in technology or weapons. It was in spirit. The calm didn't last long. As they exited the station, the fleet from earlier reappeared, now fully alert and clearly hostile. Ethan prepared for battle, weapons ready, shields up, but Leora floated forward, her eyes shining with determination. "Wait," she called over the comm. "Before you attack, just listen. We've seen things in this sector no one else has. There's beauty, potential, and friendship. Humans, we can help if you let us, but only if you're willing to see the universe differently." The lead ship's sensors scanned their vessel, searching for weakness, but it found something else. Confidence. Presence. Something no protocol could quantify. Slowly, the fleet's weapons powered down, and communication channels opened, not with threats, but with questions. Ethan watched in awe as Leora negotiated, her voice bright, her words simple but sincere. Within hours, the fleet agreed to let them pass and even shared limited information about nearby anomalies. "That's impossible," Ethan said, shaking his head. "You didn't fight them, and yet we gained everything." Leora shrugged, floating beside him. "Because sometimes being human and being joyful is enough." That night, after they had traveled a safe distance, Ethan sat in the cockpit staring at the stars. Leora drifted near him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "You've changed the way I see humans," she said softly. "I used to think you were fragile, slow, and weak. But you have this spark. And it's contagious." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. Leora's joy wasn't just personality, it was strength. It reminded him that humans had always survived against odds that seemed impossible, not just with technology, but with resilience, cleverness, and spirit. He realized something important. Leora hadn't just saved them from hostile fleets or dangerous situations. She had revealed the truth about humanity itself. They weren't the weakest species in the galaxy. They were adaptable, clever, and capable of inspiring others. And in this vast, cold universe, that might be humanity's greatest weapon of all. As Leora floated near the observation deck, humming softly, Ethan finally allowed himself to relax. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and alien hostility, and yet they had survived. Together, Leora grinned. "Tomorrow we explore the nebula again. I promise it will be more fun than today," Ethan chuckled. "Tomorrow," he said, "we discover more than just stars." Ethan's ship drifted silently through the vast emptiness of a remote sector, the stars stretching endlessly outside the viewport. The nebula they had been tracking shimmered in soft greens and purples, swirling like a living painting in the dark. Yet inside the ship a tension had settled, heavier than any asteroid storm or hostile encounter they had faced before. "They're coming," Ethan said, scanning the sensors nervously. "The syndicate ships I told you about, they've found us." Leora's eyes widened but did not fear. "I thought you said humans were clever. Maybe cleverness can outmatch big ships too." He gave her a faint smile. "Clever, yes. But even the cleverest human could not take on the syndicate alone. They had entire fleets, weapons capable of tearing through starships like paper and networks of spies in every corner of the sector. Ethan knew he had no chance in a straight fight. But humans had other ways to survive and other ways to fight. "Leora," he said carefully, "this isn't a negotiation. If they attack, we might not survive." She floated closer, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. "Then we survive differently. Humans always do." "You taught me that." Ethan felt a pang of awe. She had learned more than survival. She had learned to see the human spirit, the spark that refused to die even when the odds were impossible. That spark, it had carried humans across worlds, through wars, and into the stars. The first contact came sooner than expected. A fleet of dark gray vessels bristling with weapons and pulsing with energy appeared on the sensors. They moved fast, coordinated, and efficient. Ethan's fingers hovered over the control panel, but he hesitated. There had to be another way. "Let me try," Leora said softly. Ethan blinked. "You, what?" "I'll talk to them. Maybe they'll listen this time. Leora, it's just, trust me," she interrupted, her voice calm but resolute. "Trust humans, and trust me." Ethan had learned to trust her instincts before, even when they seemed strange. Now he nodded. "Fine. Do it." She activated the comm and broadcast her voice, not in the standard formal tone used by diplomats, but in the natural, joyful melody that had disarmed the fleet before. "Hello," she said brightly, her voice carrying laughter and warmth. "We are explorers. We mean no harm. Please don't fire, we just want to learn and share. The stars are beautiful, and there is enough light for everyone. We can help each other." The fleet hesitated. The lead ship's sensors scanned their vessel, expecting weakness, but found confidence, warmth, and determination instead. Leora's voice was not commanding nor threatening, it was impossible to ignore. "Identify yourselves," barked the syndicate comm. "We are humans," she replied simply. "We explore, we survive, we share. We can teach you. We can show you new ways to see the galaxy." Ethan watched, his heart pounding. Ships were not meant to respond to words like these. But then slowly the lead vessel powered down its weapons and the rest followed. "Unbelievable," Ethan muttered. You did it again," Leora grinned. "Sometimes humans survive because we choose not to fight like everyone else expects. We fight in different ways, but the relief was brief." The syndicate wasn't satisfied, they were testing them, probing for weakness. Before Ethan could react, they sent a warning: leave the sector immediately or face total destruction. This time, Ethan said, gripping the controls, they won't just back off. "We need a plan." Leora floated over, her eyes serious but sparkling. "Then we make one." "Humans are clever, Ethan, you always find a way." They spent hours analyzing the situation. The syndicate fleet was powerful, but it had blind spots: slow communication, reliance on standard protocols, and rigid thinking. Leora suggested exploiting these weaknesses not with weapons but with strategy, misdirection, and most importantly, human creativity. Ethan realized she was right. Humans had survived wars, hostile planets, and impossible situations precisely because they could adapt, improvise, and take risks no one else would consider. Leora had learned this instinctively, and now it was their greatest advantage. The next morning, they implemented their plan. Using the asteroid belt nearby, they created illusions on the sensors, shifting lights, false ship signatures, and phantom movements. Then, using Leora's melodic comm signals, they broadcast messages designed to confuse and intrigue the syndicate pilots. "Why is this human so joyful?" one of the enemy pilots whispered to his co-pilot. "Why is she singing through the comm?" Ethan shook his head, amazed. "I can't believe this is working." "Humans survive," Leora said with a wink. "You just have to see it." The fleet hesitated again, their rigid formations breaking. Using the opportunity, Ethan maneuvered the ship closer to the nebula where sensors were unreliable and navigation was tricky. Leora guided him through the dangerous clouds of gas and energy, laughing softly as they wove through the shifting light. The syndicate tried to follow, but their instruments failed, and their fleet became disorganized. Ethan realized they had bought themselves precious time, not with firepower but with courage, intelligence, and a companion who refused to see obstacles as permanent. Hours later, after slipping past the fleet, Ethan allowed himself to exhale. We did it. Somehow we made it through. Leora floated nearby, still smiling. We didn't just survive, Ethan. We showed them something they've never seen before. Humans can be clever, joyful, and fearless, even in the face of impossible odds. He nodded slowly. She was right. The galaxy underestimated humans constantly, seeing them as fragile or simple. But that underestimated spirit, the combination of joy, curiosity, and adaptability, was their greatest weapon. Their relief was short-lived, however. As they emerged from the nebula, a distress signal appeared on the comm. A human colony under attack by another syndicate fleet. Ethan stared at the blinking alert. They're under siege. Leora's eyes shone. Then we help them. Ethan hesitated. We're not a fleet. We're one ship. We can't take them on alone. Humans survive, Leora said softly. We find a way. We always do. He swallowed, seeing the truth in her words. Leora's joy and confidence weren't just personality traits. They were a manifestation of what made humans special. Courage, cleverness, and resilience allowed them to face impossible odds. They weren't the strongest, but they were adaptable, unpredictable, and unyielding. We'll do it, Ethan said finally. We'll help them. Over the next hours, they coordinated with the colony, using every tool at their disposal. Misdirection, sabotage of enemy systems, and even inspiring the colonists to fight creatively rather than relying on brute force. Leora's voice carried through the communications, not just as commands but as encouragement, turning fear into determination. The syndicate fleet was strong, but humans were stronger in ways they couldn't predict. Using clever maneuvers, traps, and sheer ingenuity, Ethan and Leora managed to buy enough time for the colony to organize a defense. For the first time, Ethan realized something important. Humans weren't just survivors. They were beacons. Even in the darkest situations, they could inspire others to act, to fight, and to hope. When the battle finally ended, the colony was damaged but still standing. Ethan and Leora floated outside, observing the lights of the settlement flicker back on. You see that? Leora said softly. That's human strength. Not just weapons, not just numbers, but courage, creativity, and spirit. Ethan nodded, feeling a swell of pride. She was right. The galaxy underestimated them, but that made their victories all the more profound. And as they drifted toward the next unknown star system, Ethan realized something crucial. The turning point wasn't just surviving attacks or escaping fleets. It was understanding what humans truly offered the galaxy. Not destruction, not conquest, but hope, ingenuity, and the spark of life that refused to die. Leora smiled at him, her eyes reflecting the nebula's light. Tomorrow we'll continue our journey. But today we proved something important. Humans can survive anything, and they can help others do the same. Ethan finally allowed himself to believe it. Together, human and Solari, they had turned a deadly chase into a victory, not through force but through spirit. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, but for the first time in years, Ethan Cole did not feel the loneliness he had carried for so long. Leora floated nearby, her silver hair glimmering in the dim light of the ship's interior, eyes wide and sparkling with the kind of joy that could brighten even the darkest corner of the galaxy. After the events in the nebula and the defense of the human colony, news of Ethan and Leora's exploits had spread faster than they could have imagined. Rumors reached distant systems. A human vessel, small and seemingly fragile, had defied impossible odds, not through firepower but through courage, intelligence, and a companion whose joy radiated like a beacon. It's amazing, Leora said one evening, hovering near the cockpit. Humans everywhere are talking about you. About us? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I'm just surviving. We just helped a colony. That's all. But it's more than that, she insisted. You don't understand. Humans are finally being seen for what they really are, and it's not because of weapons or tech or fleets. It's because of spirit. He looked at her, smiling faintly. Spirit, yes, That was what had carried humanity across planets, through wars, and into the stars despite being underestimated at every turn. Leora's presence reminded him that humans were capable of more than mere survival. They could inspire, create, and bring hope to places that had forgotten it. The following days were a blur of travel and discovery. Ethan and Leora charted unexplored star systems, mapping out hazards, abandoned stations, and hidden colonies. Leora's joy never wavered. She laughed, marveled, and celebrated every discovery. Her energy was infectious, and even the most distant outposts began to respond to it. Aliens and humans alike began to see the unusual human spark she highlighted, resilience and optimism, combined with creativity and courage. One day, while passing through a particularly beautiful sector, filled with swirling nebulae and asteroid clusters, the ship's sensors picked up a faint distress signal. This time it was from a small alien research station under threat from a rogue pirate band. Ethan's first instinct was caution. They were alone, far from help, and the pirates were well armed. But Leora's gaze was unwavering. "Ethan," she said softly, "we can help. Humans survive, and they help others survive too. Isn't that what we do?" He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, we do it." When they arrived, the pirates had already begun their attack. Their vessels were larger, their weapons stronger, and their strategy simple: overwhelm the station quickly. But humans and Leora were not simple. Ethan's hands flew over the controls, using clever maneuvers to draw the pirates away while Leora coordinated the station's defense. But she did more than issue orders. She inspired. She spoke over comm channels, her voice cheerful, confident, and unwavering. She reminded the station's crew that they were not helpless. Together they could resist. The pirates hesitated. They were confused by this unexpected behavior. A single human vessel, guided by a joyful companion, was defying their expectations. They expected fear, submission, or panic, but instead they found courage, organization, and laughter. Leora's joy was not childish. It was strategy. It was resilience. It was proof that humans could be unpredictable, impossible to fully anticipate, and impossible to ignore. Ethan realized something profound. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries, believing that their technology, lifespan, and physical strength were their limits. But humans had another edge: ingenuity combined with indomitable spirit. They could inspire, adapt, and persevere in ways no alien culture could foresee. Leora's presence magnified this, turning their simple courage into something almost legendary. By the time the battle ended, the station was still standing. The pirates, frustrated and bewildered, withdrew. The station's crew cheered, not only for the victory but for the human and his companion who had shown them that hope was possible, even in the darkest times. As Ethan piloted the ship away from the battle, he glanced at Leora. You really are something else," he said softly. "I'm just reflecting what I see in humans," she replied, smiling. "You bring joy, courage, and cleverness to places that have forgotten them. That's your gift. That's why you survive. That's why you matter." Ethan was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. He had traveled the stars, survived countless dangers, and fought to protect himself and others. But he had never truly understood what made humans special. Not until Leora showed him. It was not just survival, but the spark of spirit, the ability to inspire, and the joy that could shine even in the cold darkness of space. Word of their deeds spread farther. Colonies began to share stories of humans who, despite being underestimated, had outwitted pirates, protected settlements, and brought hope where none had existed. Aliens, initially dismissive of humans as weak and short-lived, began to rethink their assumptions. Some reached out seeking alliance, friendship, and guidance. Others simply observed, curious and cautious, learning that humans were not to be underestimated. Ethan and Leora continued their journey, but their mission had subtly shifted. It was no longer only about survival or exploration. It was about showing the galaxy what humans could do. With Leora by his side, laughter in her voice and joy in her eyes, they were symbols of something larger: resilience, creativity, and the ability to shine even when darkness threatened to overwhelm. One quiet evening, as the ship drifted near the edge of an uncharted nebula, Leora floated to Ethan's side. "Do you see it, Ethan? All of it. The stars, the planets, the possibilities. Humans are small, but the impact we can make, it's huge." Ethan nodded, staring at the distant lights. Yeah, I see it now. And not just me. Everyone who sees us, everyone we help, they see it too. Leora grinned. That's why I'm joyful. That's why I exist with you. Humans aren't just survivors. They're beacons for the first time Ethan truly understood. Humans may not be the strongest physically or the most technologically advanced or the oldest species in the galaxy, but they had something unique. Something impossible to measure or quantify. Something that could move hearts, inspire courage, and change outcomes in ways no weapon ever could. It was the human spirit. And with Leora reflecting that spirit, their journey was no longer just about exploration. It was about shaping the galaxy. One act of courage, one spark of joy, and one inspired life at a time. As they continued toward the next unknown system, Ethan allowed himself to hope. Not naive hope, but the kind that came from understanding one's strengths and purpose. With Leora at his side, he knew humans would continue to survive, adapt, and shine, no matter what the universe threw at them. And in the vast emptiness of space, the legend began to grow. Not of weapons or conquest, but of humans and their companions who brought light where there had been darkness, courage where there had been fear, and joy where there had been despair. Ethan glanced at Leora, smiling. Ready for the next adventure? Always, she replied, laughing softly, her voice filling the cabin like sunlight. Together, they set a course for the unknown, not as conquerors, but as humans, clever, resilient, joyful, and ready to leave their mark on the galaxy forever.